December 23, 1971. The halls of a prestigious school in Lima, Peru echoed with celebration. 17-year-old Emma Martinez had just graduated from high school. Her dream? To follow in her parents' footsteps and become a zoologist. Her parents, both renowned scientists, ran a research station deep in the Peruvian Amazon, studying wildlife in one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. Emma had spent years of her childhood there, learning the secrets of the jungle, understanding its rhythms, its dangers, and its hidden kindness. Those lessons seemed like distant memories now as she stood among her classmates, diploma in hand, ready to celebrate Christmas with her father at the research station. But first, she had to get there. The next morning, Christmas Eve, Emma and her mother Maria arrived at Jorge Chavez International Airport. The terminal was packed. Several flights had been canceled the day before due to bad weather, and now desperate travelers filled every corner, hoping to get home for Christmas. Emma and her mother had originally planned to fly on December 19th or 20th, but Emma wanted to attend her graduation ceremony. Now they had only one option left: a flight with Pacific Airways, a regional airline with a troubling safety record. Emma's father had urged them not to fly with this airline. "Please don't fly with Pacific Airways. Any other airline but not Pacific," he had pleaded over the phone. But Maria reassured him. "I think it will be okay," she said. They had no choice. It was the only flight available. 2 seats. Christmas Eve. What could go wrong? At just before noon, Flight 2085 taxied down the runway. The Lockheed Electra turboprop was loaded with 86 passengers and 6 crew members. Most were families heading home for Christmas. Gifts were stacked in overhead compartments. Children clutched new toys. The smell of holiday cakes filled the cabin. Emma sat in seat 19F, the window seat, next to her mother in 19E. As the plane climbed into the sky, Emma looked out at the landscape below, the sprawling city of Lima giving way to the dense green carpet of the Amazon rainforest. The flight to Pucallpa was supposed to take less than an hour. For the first 25 minutes, everything was fine. Passengers chatted, stewardesses served snacks, and the steady hum of the engines was almost soothing. But then, the plane entered a massive storm system. The sky turned black. Thunder roared around them. Lightning flashed through the windows like camera bulbs. The plane began to shake violently. Overhead compartments flew open. Bags tumbled into the aisles. Christmas gifts scattered across the floor. Flowers, cakes, toys, all airborne now. People screamed. Children cried. Emma's mother gripped her hand tightly. They looked into each other's eyes, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "Hopefully this goes all right," her mother whispered. Then Emma saw it, a brilliant white light on the left engine, brighter than anything she had ever seen. Her mother's voice cut through the chaos, calm but final. "That is the end. It's all over." Those were the last words Emma ever heard from her mother. The lightning struck, the engine exploded, and the plane began to disintegrate in midair. The fuselage ripped apart, the wings separated, the tail section broke away. Emma felt a violent jolt, and suddenly she was no longer inside the airplane. She was outside, falling, still strapped to her seat, alone, plunging through the darkness. 10,000 feet, 2 miles of empty air between her and the ground below. The last thing she remembered was the sound of wind screaming past her ears. Then nothing. Blackness. When Emma opened her eyes, she had no idea how long she had been unconscious. She blinked. Her right eye wouldn't open all the way, swollen shut. She tried to move and pain shot through her body like electricity. Her collarbone was broken. Her right arm had a deep gash, blood dried around the edges. Her knee screamed in agony, a ruptured ligament. Scratches and bruises covered every inch of exposed skin, but she was alive. She looked at her watch, 9 o'clock in the morning, December 25th, Christmas Day. She must have been unconscious for nearly 20 hours. She was lying on the jungle floor, still strapped to her row of seats. Slowly, painfully, she unbuckled herself and tried to stand. The world spun. She steadied herself against a tree. Where was she? The Amazon rainforest. Dense, dark, endless. She called out for her mother. "Mom! Mom!" Her voice disappeared into the thick canopy above. No response. Just the distant calls of howler monkeys and the buzz of insects. She was alone. Emma spent that first day searching for her mother. She stumbled through the wreckage scattered across the jungle floor, pieces of the airplane, luggage, seats, bodies. She found a row of 3 seats, passengers still strapped in, buried nearly 2 feet into the ground from the impact. They had hit head first. Emma's heart pounded. Was her mother one of them? She didn't want to look, but she had to know. She took a stick and knocked a shoe off one of the bodies. The toenails were painted. Her mother never wore nail polish. It wasn't her. Emma moved on, fighting back tears, fighting back the crushing weight of loss and fear. As she searched, she found something else. A small package of candy in the wreckage. She took it. It would be her only food for the next 11 days. By nightfall, Emma knew she had to make a decision. She could stay here, near the crash site, and hope rescuers would find her. Or she could try to save herself. She remembered her father's words from years ago, lessons taught casually during family walks through the jungle. If you ever get lost, find a creek. Follow it downstream. A creek becomes a stream becomes a river. And where there are rivers, there are people. On the second day, Emma found a small creek. The water was brown and muddy, but it was moving, flowing downhill. She began to walk. Not along the bank. That would be too slow, too difficult with the dense undergrowth. She walked in the water itself, step by painful step. Her injured knee throbbed with every movement. Her broken collarbone made her right arm nearly useless, but she kept going. The creek was shallow at first, barely covering her ankles, but as hours turned into days, it grew deeper. Sometimes the water was up to her waist, sometimes her chest. She had to be careful. This was the Amazon. The water was full of dangers. Piranhas, stingrays, caimans, South American crocodiles. Emma saw them sometimes, sliding off the banks into the water as she approached. But she wasn't afraid. She remembered what her parents had taught her. Caimans rarely attack humans. Piranhas are mostly scavengers. As long as she kept moving, kept making noise, they would leave her alone. The real enemies were smaller. Mosquitoes swarmed her constantly. Biting flies left welts on her skin. Leeches attached themselves to her legs. By the 4th day, Emma's strength was fading. She had eaten only a few pieces of candy. She was dehydrated despite drinking from the stream. The jungle was suffocatingly hot during the day. At night, temperatures dropped, and she shivered in her thin, torn dress. She had only one sandal left. The other had been lost in the crash. Her feet were cut and bleeding. But the worst part was her arm. The deep gash had become infected, and now, when she looked at it, she could see movement beneath the skin. Maggots. Botfly larvae had laid eggs in her wound, and now they were eating her flesh from the inside. She could feel them crawling, wriggling. She tried to ignore it, but the sensation was maddening. She knew if the infection spread, if it reached her bloodstream, she would die. Sepsis would kill her faster than starvation. But there was nothing she could do. No medicine, no tools, no help. So she kept walking. The stream had become a river now, wider and faster. She was making progress, but time was running out. Days blurred together. Emma lost track of time. Was it day 6? Day 7? She didn't know anymore. She was delirious from hunger and pain. Sometimes she saw things that weren't there. Shadows moving between the trees. Voices calling her name. Was she going crazy? Or dying? She didn't know. One afternoon, she stumbled upon something that nearly broke her spirit. Vultures. Dozens of them, circling overhead, riding the thermal currents. She knew what that meant. Bodies. More crash victims. She found them soon after. 3 passengers, still in their seats, half buried in the jungle floor. She forced herself to check if one of them was her mother. It wasn't, but the sight haunted her. All these people, dead, and she was still alive. Why? Why was she the only one? Survivor's guilt is a strange thing. Even in the midst of fighting for her own life, Emma felt the weight of those deaths pressing down on her. She had nightmares whenever she managed to sleep, brief, restless moments of unconsciousness. She dreamed of the crash, of falling, of her mother's last words. "It's all over." But it wasn't over. Not yet. Emma kept moving. On the ninth day, Emma could barely walk. Her injured leg dragged behind her. Her vision was blurry, partially from her swollen eye, partially from exhaustion and dehydration. She was dizzy, weak. The maggots in her arm had multiplied. She estimated there were more than 30 now, a writhing mass eating away at her infected tissue. She knew she was reaching the limit of human endurance. How much longer could she survive? One more day? Two? The jungle seemed endless, an infinite green maze with no exit. But then, late in the afternoon, she saw something that made her heart skip. A boat. A large wooden boat moored at the riverbank. At first, she thought she was hallucinating. She had seen so many illusions by now, mirages created by her desperate, dying brain. But when she got closer and touched it, it was real, solid, weathered wood beneath her fingertips. A boat meant people. People meant salvation. She looked around. No one was there. But there was a path, a trail leading up from the riverbank into the jungle. Emma followed it, her last reserves of strength carrying her forward, and there it was. A small hut, a shelter with a palm leaf roof, empty. But inside she found something. A can of gasoline, 1 liter. Emma stared at the can of gasoline. Her mind was foggy, thoughts moving slowly through the haze of exhaustion. But then a memory surfaced. She was younger, maybe 12 years old, at the research station with her father. One of their dogs had gotten an infection, worms in a wound. She remembered watching her father pour kerosene on the injury. The worms came out. The dog survived. Gasoline was similar to kerosene. Both were petroleum products. Both were toxic to parasites. Could it work? Did she have any other choice? Emma sat down, her hands trembling. She unscrewed the cap on the gasoline can. The smell was overwhelming, sharp, chemical, nauseating. She took a deep breath and poured the gasoline directly into the gash on her arm. The pain was beyond anything she had ever experienced. It felt like her arm was on fire, like acid eating through her flesh. She bit down on her sleeve to keep from screaming. Tears streamed down her face, but she kept pouring. And then, through the searing pain, she saw them, the maggots. They began to writhe and twist, desperate to escape the burning liquid. One by one, they fell out of her wound onto the floor of the hut. Emma counted them. 35. 35 parasites that had been eating her alive. When it was over, she collapsed on the floor, gasping, sobbing. But she had done it. She had saved her own life. Again. Emma spent the rest of that day and night in the hut. She was too weak to move. She lay there, drifting in and out of consciousness, watching the jungle through the open doorway. Small frogs hopped around the hut, going about their business. She was so hungry. She thought about catching one, eating it, but she couldn't find the strength. Later, she would learn those were poison dart frogs. If she had eaten one, the toxins would have killed her within hours. Even in her delirium, some instinct had kept her from making that fatal mistake. As night fell, Emma wondered if anyone would come. Was this hut abandoned, a forgotten outpost deep in the jungle, or was it still in use? She had no way of knowing. All she could do was wait and hope. Morning came. The sun rose over the canopy, casting golden light through the trees. And then Emma heard something. Voices. Men's voices, speaking in Spanish. They were approaching the hut. When the 3 lumberjacks walked up to their hut and saw a teenage girl lying on the floor, covered in blood and filth, they thought they were seeing a ghost or a monster. In local indigenous legends, there were stories of water spirits, female creatures that haunted rivers and drove men mad. The lumberjacks stopped dead in their tracks, fear in their eyes. Emma tried to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. "Help me," she managed in Spanish. "I was in a plane crash. The men stared at her, not comprehending. A plane crash? Here? In the middle of nowhere? It seemed impossible. "Please," Emma said. "My name is Emma Martinez. I fell from flight 2085, 11 days ago." The men looked at each other. They had heard news on the radio weeks ago about a missing plane. Everyone assumed all passengers were dead. But here was a survivor. Barely alive, but alive nonetheless. The lumberjacks quickly got to work. They cleaned Emma's wounds as best they could. They gave her water and a small amount of food, not too much, as her stomach couldn't handle it after so many days without eating. But it was too late in the day to start the journey out of the jungle. They would have to wait until morning. The next day, December 11th, the lumberjacks placed Emma in their canoe and began the long journey downriver. It took 11 hours of rowing and paddling to reach the nearest village. 11 hours of bumping along the river, pain shooting through Emma's body with every movement. But she was safe now. Help was coming. When they finally reached civilization, word spread quickly. The girl from the plane crash, the miracle survivor. A helicopter was called. Emma was airlifted to a hospital in Pucallpa. And there, waiting for her, was her father. When Emma saw him, she broke down. All the strength she had maintained for 11 days crumbled. She sobbed in his arms, and he held her, unable to speak, tears streaming down his face. His daughter was alive. Against all odds, she had survived. But her mother was still missing, still lost in that endless jungle. Emma's father held her tighter, and in that moment their grief and relief became one. She was the sole survivor of 92 people. Everyone else was dead, including her mother, Maria, who had survived the initial crash but died from her injuries while waiting for rescue that never came. 14 other passengers had also survived the impact. All of them perished in the jungle. Only Emma made it out. Emma spent weeks in the hospital recovering from her physical injuries. The broken collarbone, the infected arm, the countless cuts, bruises, and insect bites. But the physical wounds would heal. The psychological ones would last a lifetime. When Emma was strong enough, she helped search parties locate the crash site and recover the bodies of the victims, including her mother. It was the hardest thing she ever had to do. Walking back into that jungle, seeing the wreckage again, finding her mother's body among the debris. The guilt was overwhelming. Why did she survive when her mother didn't? When 91 other people didn't? That question would haunt Emma for the rest of her life. Some people called her survival a miracle. Others credited her training and knowledge of the jungle. Emma herself struggled to understand it. She wasn't particularly religious or spiritual. She looked for logical explanations. Maybe the row of seats she was strapped to rotated like a helicopter rotor as it fell, slowing her descent. Maybe the thick jungle canopy cushioned her impact. Maybe it was just pure luck. Or maybe it was all of those things combined. After her physical recovery, Emma returned to her parents' native Germany. She withdrew from public life, refusing interview requests for decades. The media attention was too much. She wanted to process her trauma privately. She threw herself into her studies, determined to honor her parents' legacy. She graduated from university with a degree in biology. She earned her doctorate in mammalogy, specializing in bats. She returned to Peru to conduct research in the Amazon, the same jungle that had nearly killed her. In 1989, Emma married another scientist, a fellow researcher who shared her passion for conservation. Together, they continued the work her parents had started. She eventually took over as director of the research station where she had spent her childhood, the place she was trying to reach when the plane crashed. The jungle, she said, wasn't evil. It had saved her life. The thick canopy had cushioned her fall. The streams had led her to safety. The knowledge her parents taught her had kept her alive. The Amazon was not hell. It was simply nature, indifferent, powerful, unforgiving to those who didn't understand it. But Emma understood it, and she spent the rest of her life protecting it. Decades later, Emma finally broke her silence. She wrote a memoir about her experience. She participated in a documentary about the crash. She shared her story not for fame or attention, but because she realized it might help others. People facing their own impossible situations. People who felt like giving up. People who needed to know that the human spirit is capable of extraordinary things when pushed to its absolute limit. Emma's story became one of the most remarkable survival stories in aviation history. But for her, it was more than just a story. It was a testament to her parents' teachings, a tribute to her mother's memory, and a reminder that knowledge, preparation, and an unbreakable will to survive can overcome even the most impossible odds. Today, Emma continues her work as a scientist and conservationist. She lives quietly, splitting her time between Germany and Peru. She still visits the research station in the Amazon. She still remembers every moment of those 11 days. The fear, the pain, the loneliness, but also the strength she found within herself, the lessons that saved her life, and the love of her parents that guided her home. What can we learn from Emma's survival? First, knowledge is survival. Emma's years of jungle training with her parents gave her the tools she needed, following water downstream, avoiding certain dangers, understanding the ecosystem. Without that knowledge, she wouldn't have made it past the first day. Second, never give up. There were 1,000 moments when Emma could have laid down and died, when the pain was too much, when hope seemed lost. But she kept moving, one step at a time, one day at a time. Third, sometimes survival requires making painful choices, pouring gasoline on an infected wound, pushing through injuries that would cripple most people, facing fears that would paralyze others. Emma did what needed to be done, no matter how much it hurt. And finally, the human body and mind are capable of far more than we realize. When faced with death, something inside us fights back with a ferocity that surprises even ourselves. Emma was 17 years old, injured, alone, and terrified. But she survived, because she refused to die. So that's the story. Incredible, right? A 17-year-old girl falls 2 miles from a disintegrating airplane, survives the impact, and then walks for 11 days through one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. All with a broken collarbone, infected wounds full of maggots, and nothing but a packet of candy for food. It sounds like fiction, but it's not. It's real. Emma Martinez is still alive today, still working, still contributing to science and conservation. Her story reminds us that no matter how impossible things seem, no matter how dark the situation, there's always a chance. Always a reason to take one more step, to survive one more day, to never give up hope. I want to hear from you. If you were in Emma's situation, what do you think you would have done differently? Could you have survived? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story inspired you or taught you something new, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got more incredible survival stories coming your way. Until next time, stay safe out there, and remember, you're stronger than you think.